Hello and welcome to Terrain Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a faux fur wargaming mat. Now this is very similar to the realistic tall grass area terrain that I did, except we're going to be doing like a mat sized. In this case I'm actually going to be doing a 3 foot by 3 foot for the Marvel Crisis Protocol game. It's very similar to that technique, and I must give a shout out to Redbeard Baron's video. Can't remember the exact order of that phrase, but I'll put a link in the description to his video. The technique is almost identical, but I will be adding my own thoughts and considerations and that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll get on. I would like just a quick shout out to my recent Patreons. I had a couple of new Patreons, so I just wanted to say thank you, especially if you came from the terrain stuff, so thank you for that. But yeah, the faux fur, it's often called teddy bear fur. I will leave a link in the description if you're in the UK, but just keep in mind that you can get this, you know, probably anywhere that in like a textile shop. So let's go, let's show you how I made it, and yeah, let's go from there. So I initially had a 6 foot by 3 foot set like cut length of fur because I was going to make this for Star Wars Legion, but I already realized I already have mats for that. So what I actually did eventually was I cut this down to a 3 by 3, and what I was going to do was have a 3 by 3 and then a kill team / Warcry size board, but cutting the fur takes a long time. This fur that I've got here is sort of like this mustardy yellow, which I actually quite like because it means I'm not going to have to use yellow paints to have like really bright yellow grass. However, as I said, I got this set up this table, so it is outside and it's a summer's day in the UK, so the lighting might be a little bit weird. But initially, I just set I bought a little buzz razor from little buzz cutter thing from Amazon for about £10 in the UK. I don't know if the razor wasn't particularly great, but cutting through the very dense fur took a very long time. So initially I thought, well, I'll set off with the longest cutter just to get most of it off, and then I'll just keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And quite frankly, like, doing that took absolutely forever. It just doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, and the amount of fur that you get, it's literally still, right as of now, all over the garden. Some of it's in the kitchen. It wasn't even a very windy day, but it just blows everywhere and goes everywhere, so it is quite a messy thing to make. Just keep that in mind. And eventually I decide, well, you know, I'm not going to do the Warcry / kill team size. I'm just going to try and stick with the 3 by 3 because damn, otherwise I will be here for days. And yeah, so I actually just do what I said. I go with the shaver, and I like go from the, I think it's a 12mm down to a 3mm eventually. But what I actually would recommend, having done this now, I think I would initially just take the scissors to it. The scissors, whilst ultimately you think might be longer, is possibly quicker, because what was happening is, let's say you're using like a 6mm shaver, you're not actually cutting everything to 6mm because it's so long. You're just cutting some of the hairs down to whatever, maybe 6mm, but a lot of the long hairs were staying because it just doesn't, maybe if you had a better razor like shaver, it would all go off and it would go instantly down to the length. But what was happening, like if I was using 6mm and I was shaving it, I'd have to shave it 2, 3, 4 times. So ultimately, I think the scissors would be better. Now, if you are going to use scissors, you need to make sure you're not cutting like straight lines into it. If you've ever been to a barber's and they sort of like feather it, you want to try and do that and make sure you change up the angle of the cuts and that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think if I would have just spent 1 hour using the scissors, I would have got through this a lot quicker. Instead, I use the shaver. Now, there is at one point, what I do is I actually take the guards off, which is basically, it's going to shave whatever I, you know, it would shave it to 0. It shaves everything. But what I did was I sort of angled the razor so that it was pointing up rather than it being right around the ground, and I felt like doing that, I managed to go through it like a lot easier and to cut through most of the fur and still have a bit of length. That I then went back to the 3mm, and what happens is, because it's now shorter, you actually getting closer and closer to the 3mm because there's less longer hairs getting in the way. So this is one of those things, like, it takes a long time, and ultimately you sort of need the grass to be short if you want your miniatures to stay on it and stand on it. So you really need to do this step. Ideally, if you have clamps, you want to clamp this to your desk, because having all the mat like fold up whilst you're shaving it is a massive pain in the backside. Honestly, shaving this fur is one of the worst things that I've done in recent times, and I very much wish that I just took the scissors to it earlier. But the problem with the scissors is you do then get like little straight lines in it. No matter how hard you try not to, it's almost inevitable that you do. So I think I would have took this, I would have spent half an hour cutting it with the scissors, and then probably tried to do half an hour of it with like maybe the 3 guard on the shaver, and I think that would have been the best. Ultimately though, this took me like 3 hours just to get it to a vague length that I was happy with, and I think I actually probably would have wanted to go a little bit shorter. Yeah, not a fun experience. It was a boiling hot day in the UK, and I've got a bit of tan on my arms and stuff like that from this, which, you know, as a man who doesn't normally like the sun, this is not ideal. But yeah, not that interesting to look at, but just needed to talk about that. You just got to keep cutting it down, keep shaving it. You'll get there, and I recommend the scissors probably to start with. Once you're happy with it, then you know, I think you've done most of the bulk of the work there. Getting it shaved down is the bulk of the work. We're going to start with the paint. Now, I had 2 main colours. I had this sort of earth green, which I bought from like a Hobbycraft or something like that. It's a proper acrylic paint, and you're gonna get your paint, put it on the fur, and brush it in with a comb. Well, you can brush it in with a brush first, if you want to, or you can just brush it straight in with the comb. And you really got to put in the work here. The more you do with the comb, the like more grassier it will feel, the more that the hairs don't clump together and they actually look more like grass, because clumped up grass just looks like paint in hair. It's not a great look, so you just need to really make sure you comb through it. Now, I actually would recommend that you do all of the colours at the same time. So I had this earth green, and I also had like this naturally green colour that I bought from Wilkinson's. Now, I would recommend switching between the two. Don't water it down, don't dry your brush, just keep the colour on your brush, and just keep like do an area at a time. So just keep going. So do the dark colour, do the light green. You know, if you want to whack in yellows because you've got a brown mat, do that. And try and do an area all at the same time. However, I quickly realised once I'd done a corner that I was going to run out of the green. I was going to run out of all my paints. I was just doing too much paints for the area. So this was a full tub of the earth green and a full tub of this like lighter green. So I essentially decided, well, what I'll do, I've got more of the lighter green than the dark green, and it's I prefer the dark green. I thought I'll take the light green and do the rest of the mat with the light green, which is fine, apart from the fact that when you then go back over it and it's all dried and you come back in with the dark green, it doesn't spread as well because all the hair is sort of already dried up hair. So ideally, make sure you've got enough paint, number one. Secondly, try and do one area at a time with all of the colours, because you'll be able to brush through it while it's all wet. Whereas if you let an area dry and then you put another colour on it, it then becomes much harder to brush through, which means the paint doesn't spread and it's more likely to clump up. So just keep that in mind. Now, ultimately, like, it took me a long time, but I was vaguely happy with it at the end of the day. Yeah, I got green all over my table and stuff like that. The light was fading and I thought, oh, that looks quite nice. However, I looked at it in the morning and I just wasn't happy with it. There was too much of the yellow showing through. And I think the video makes it look better than what it did in person, which is handy for me. But I went back with it, and in the morning I was like, right, I don't like all this yellow. So I got my airbrush out and I got like a different colour green that I just did, like an airbrush paint green that I had. And I was just like, right, I'm going to try and fix in some of the yellow. I won't need to blend it as much with the airbrush. I would, if you've got an airbrush, just use the airbrush for the whole thing maybe. But yeah, the airbrush did sort of do a lot of work. And ultimately, even that, I ran out of that paint. So I was like, oh, damn it, I'm really not happy with the way it's blended together. So my battery died on the camera as well. But literally, I just got like a dark green spray paint and sprayed not the whole thing, but sprayed most of the yellow patches to get it mostly green. And I'm pretty happy with it. The downside to using spray paint is that even that paint is thicker. It like dries quicker and it's harder to comb through, which does mean my hair is sort of like a little bit clumpier and a little bit stiffer than I would have liked, but that was the price to pay for the colours that I wanted. On the camera, it just looks more green, but honestly, it was bugging me and I needed to do it, so I did it. I would advise probably just airbrush paints ideally. Otherwise, do as I said and just concentrate on an area, move on to the next area, and make sure you've got enough of the paint. So that's it. The concept of it is really simple, very similar to the small area terrain for the fur realistic tall grass that I did. I'll try and leave a link to that, probably do that at the start. very similar to that, except it's just on a bigger scale. As I said, a couple of advice. Main pieces of advice, I guess, would be use scissors to start. It's just a lot easier to cut like this kind of thick hair rather than to go straight for a 3mm shaver, unless you've got a really good shaver perhaps, is to just trim it down first and then get in there with your shaver. I think that would work. Or you can use the actual shaver without a guard, but like make it so if this is the ground, make it so it's like pointed up like that, so you're just trimming a good length, because that will get rid of it quite quickly as well. Although if you go straight down to the material, you will have a bit of issues. Take it like you just got to trim it with the scissors first, unless you've got a great shaver. That took a long time and I really disliked that part of it. Getting the paint on it, as I said, I had a couple of issues. You want to try and concentrate on an area, because you want to get all the colours done in that area while the paint is sort of still wet. It blends better, it looks better, and overall that would have ultimately looked better. The reason I stopped was because I was like, oh well, I'm running out of the paint, so I'll do my light green everywhere and then I'll come back and try and do the dark green where I have to. And it didn't really work, it didn't really spread as much. I had more bits of the natural yellow underneath, so I didn't really like it. And then I was on like, not panicking trying to fix it, but I thought I'll try it with the airbrush, try it with some spray paints, and ultimately that did work, but my grass now is a little bit clumpier than it possibly should be. You live and learn, I guess. Make sure you've got enough paint, make sure you've got enough materials, always worth doing. I could have just bought more, I guess, but I didn't want to wait. I just wanted to get it done, which I think is quite common. But ultimately, this sort of like realistic tall grass mat, I'm going to be using it for like Marvel Crisis Protocol, which is 3x3. It folds very easily, so it stores nicely, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it ultimately. I think it looks good on camera, and if I ever do any battle reports, that's pretty much one reason. I would have preferred the hair to be less clumpy, but that's my own fault. You can avoid that by being better than I am, so don't do as I did, do as I say, if you want to. I mean, you don't have to. Other than that, guys, like I said, there will be pictures. I'm sure I've already put pictures and stuff like that. It ultimately looks fine. A bit of the spray paint is a bit shinier than I wanted. I could hit it with a bit of matte varnish, but then that's even going to be worse for the clumpage. That's because I used the spray paint. Yeah, that's it basically. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. As I said, Redbeard Baron, try and check out his video. Hopefully I've added a bit of difference other than that, but you know, it is essentially the same kind of concept. And yeah, have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.